Welcome back to HQ Spotlight. We've got Danny Kanell here to go over the updated college football playoff bracket. The quarterfinals are set. All of them played on New Year's Day with the exception of the Fiesta, which will be New Year's Eve. So, Danny, we're going to do a bit of a reset here. Let's start at the Peach Bowl. We've got Texas and Arizona State. Who advances and why?
So I love these matchups. I think they're going to be very entertaining. I'm crossing my fingers we don't see more blowouts. But this is the biggest point spread of the weekend. I'm going to go with the favorite. I'm going to go Texas, although I do think Arizona State will be a similar type matchup as Clemson. Like, I think their quarterback, Sam Leavitt, could put up some points against that secondary, which showed a little bit more vulnerable than they have all season long. Cam Skattebo has just figured out ways to make play all year long as well. But Texas's defense is scary. I still think they'll be able to shut them down when they have to, maybe the red zone possessions. And then what's crazy about the Texas Longhorns, as good as they've been offensively, I still don't think you've seen their A game, like their best of the year. If they get that, the game could get ugly. But until I see it, I'm going to say Texas wins, but I don't know if they cover.
Okay. Our Pete Prisco, by the way, will be at
Did you
this
see all
game.
That gear he had on?
Oh, yeah, especially the big hat that he
Yeah.
has. We got to get him to wear that one more time. All right, so that's the Peach Bowl being played in Atlanta. Let's get to a game where you get nostalgic now, because even though they're league rivals in the Big Ten, this would have been Big Ten Pac-12 Rose Bowl back in the day. Rematch of Ohio State and Oregon. Do we get the same result, Danny, or a different result?
I think the winner of this probably wins the national championship, and I don't think that's an uncommon opinion. But a lot of people are jumping on Ohio State, and I get why. Ohio State looked incredible, their best performance of the year. And if you get that version, my goodness, it could be ugly, and they could beat Oregon. But Ohio State's been a little bit up and down all year long. Oregon has been steady as she goes. The most consistent team out there. Every time they've been tested, they have passed it. Dillon Gabriel has delivered. Watched him throw 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions against Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. So I'm going to trust what I've seen all season long from Oregon, although I do think they'll have their hands full versus Ohio State.
So Oregon will advance. If we get to the Fiesta, hard not to be nostalgic. Speaking of Boise and the Fiesta from 2007, they get back to Phoenix now, underdogs against Penn State.
Yeah, Oklahoma fans do not want to relive that one at any part, in any way, shape, or form. So everyone's going to bring up Ashton Jeanty versus Oregon. Oh, he went for 193 and he went for 3 touchdowns, especially our own Damian Harris, who was still mad that he didn't get the Heisman Trophy. Oregon's defense is good, but I don't think they were prepared for Ashton Jeanty, and they did not have their best game. Penn State now is well aware of what Ashton Jeanty can do, and that defensive front is ferocious. I think they'll have a game plan to shut him down. And as good as Maddox Madsen has been all season long for Boise State, this game could be one where he's a little bit overwhelmed. We saw Kevin Jennings running for his life out there for when SMU faced Penn State. I think this could be similar. The defensive front too much, and I do think Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are able to play a little bit of bully ball against the Broncos. So I like Penn State.
Last but not least, we have the Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame and Georgia. Now, we've talked about this before. You were tasked with giving out your first bracket way early when this just happened, before the Carson Beck news.
Yeah.
Yes. Now that we have a little more clarity with that, Notre Dame or Georgia, who moves on?
So I'm going to go with the Fighting Irish. 2 reasons why. One, now that we know Carson Beck is out, I think people are just way too lackadaisical about, oh, we'll just put in Gunnar Stockton. No big deal. This is a quarterback who hasn't played very much. And the other part of this is that Notre Dame's defense, what we've seen all season long, and then what we saw in the playoffs this past weekend against Indiana was phenomenal. So, and plus the emergence of Riley Leonard, who's gotten better and better and better. Both as a runner, we knew what he could do, but as a passer, I don't think he's going to torch Georgia's defense, but I think he's going to do enough through the air to get the dub for the Fighting Irish. So I got the Fighting Irish moving on.
Okay, Fighting Irish catching 2.5 points in that game. So let's get now and reset to the semifinals. You have Texas and Oregon, Notre Dame and Penn State. So it'll be the Cotton Bowl with Texas and Oregon. Who moves on to the Natty?
Boy, whoever has this one, the path to get here, especially if it's Oregon, is going to be amazing. There will be no question if they're the best team. Texas has been phenomenal all season long. I mentioned before about their A game. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen it all season long with Oregon. They really haven't had that game where they haven't delivered. I trust them more in this position. They've got the defensive pieces in place, which I think will be able to contain Quinn Ewers and that rushing attack, which really showed to be dangerous versus Clemson. And they've got the offense with weapons across the board and Tez Johnson and others that I think will be able to again, we saw Texas's secondary for the first time all season long when they faced Kite Klubnik give up some big plays. Dillon Gabriel, the most experienced quarterback in college football. I think he's able to put up enough points to get it done. So
that was interesting. I didn't think Texas was going to win and cover the spread. I didn't think the scoring was going to be as high as we saw, mentioning what Klubnik was able to do. All right, Danny, How does the orange play out in South Florida?
So this one, another interesting game here. This is a great matchup, like a couple of blue bloods going at it. This is where I'm worried a little bit more about Riley Leonard. I mentioned before his development as a passer, and he is a monster as a runner. He can single-handedly take over a game. Even go back when he was at Duke, he beat Clemson pretty much all by himself. But I do think there's limitations if you can take away Jeremiah Love in that rushing attack with Riley Leonard, which I do think Penn State's defense will be able to do. Abdul Carter was in the backfield all day long against SMU. I think you're able to shut down and corral that Notre Dame team. So I've got Penn State. Maybe this is the game, too, where Drew Aller has to step up a little bit more, because I don't picture them running the ball through that Notre Dame defense. But the loss of their best defensive tackle is significant, that they lost in that game against Indiana. Riley, their interior defensive presence, lead sacker on the team, he's out. That played a part into this pick as well.
So interestingly enough, the national championship at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta is a game that you saw at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis at the Big Ten Championship. You had hinted at Oregon, again, the Ducks, but how close? Is it any different than what we saw about a month ago?
So I don't think so. The only difference, I think, will be the crowd, because it was pretty much 90% Penn State fans, because I think most Oregon Duck fans were like, we don't want to waste our money to go to Indianapolis. We're going to save up to go to the Rose Bowl and potentially to Atlanta for the national championship game. And that's where I think you'll see a balanced out crowd. But even when we saw this matchup, and yes, I know Penn State had 2 100-yard rushers against Oregon's defense, I never felt like Oregon was truly in danger of losing the ball game. They were pretty much in control from start to finish. You saw them chip away. You saw the defense bend but not break. And ultimately, I do think Oregon is the cream of the crop, the best team that we've seen in college football this season. I think Dan Lanning, it's a coronation of him as a top 3 coach in college football today. The Ducks are going to take home the national championship.
If they win, they will have certainly earned it, given the draw that they've given.
No question about strength of schedule or who have they beaten. They will have beaten everybody.
There would be no asterisk there. By the way, before I let you go, we circle back, come full circle to the first round games. The average margin of victory was like 19.3 points. Danny, what did we think of the first round? Does it need to be changed?
There is no sugarcoating it. The games were awful, right? And I hated it from a college football fan perspective. But it will get better. They will fix this. And one easy fix is the seeding, where we came in with a system where we have to remember when this system was created, there were 4 Power 4 conferences that were pretty much created equal, right? Oklahoma and Texas were used to be in the Big 12. You had a Pac-12 which existed with Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Washington in it. So they thought giving those first 4, automatic bids to the Power 4 highest ranked champions was probably going to go to those conferences. I don't think they planned on it being the mess that we have now. But I do think the easy fix is just ranking them and putting them in, and then the top 4 seeded teams, top 4 ranked teams get the buys, and then you let the rest weed out themselves so you don't have that incredibly disparity that we saw in the first round. I think that's an easy solution. That's just one, because again, in another year, this is only a 2-year experiment. In the next year, we're going to get this thing completely disheveled. Like, it's going to be blown up, and there'll probably be 14 teams, and it's going to look a whole lot different. But the good news is, man, the fans showed up, because that was impressive, and that's what college football is about. It's what separates it from the NFL. Atmospheres, pageantry, history was all on display. The good games are coming, though. Be patient, Tommy. They're coming this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of fans showing up, you guys are going to be doing live tailgating at the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
Is that right? What can fans expect there? Fort Worth, Texas.
We're going to do a little game leading up into the Orange Bowl, which is that night, and then the Cotton Bowl is the next day. So hopefully the fan bases that are there come by, say hello. We got giveaways. You can meet Bud Elliott and get Tom Fornelli's autograph, and Chip Patterson. You can shake hands with him and maybe even share a cocktail.
There you go. Good times there. Danny, certainly appreciate it. We're going to cap things with odds to win the college football playoff. Interestingly enough, Georgia at plus 480. That's actually slightly shorter odds than the Carson Beck news. Georgia 5-1 as recently as last week.